started. All right. That's for you being able to serve the anointing on the flow. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Emily, whatever characters don't have mine.
Yep.
And I just need one for Alex. And Jimmy. Is that Rick? That's Rick. We got one.
Glad you asked.
There we go. And council members, at the end of the meeting, I asked to suspend the rules and hear a resolution on the water injection. Jimmy is the housekeeping. Okay, I think we're doing pretty good.
Does Destiny pray?
Everybody got a microphone ready, Emily? Okay. Now, the governor has listed people to have a special approval.
Trying to zoom in on this
Presentation of minutes of September 31st. Oh, roll call. Roll call.
Here.
Councilmember Bolden.
Here.
Councilmember Blevins.
Here.
Councilmember Sansing.
Here.
Councilmember Ray.
Here.
Councilmember Mashburn.
Here.
Councilmember Trailer.
Here.
Councilmember Twitty.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Raines.
Here.
All are present, sir.
All right, we have presentations of minutes.
Council meeting or our school?
Move that we accept the minutes.
Well, we're just presenting them. We're not approving them, right?
But they can approve them if they
Okay.
would like.
Okay. You got a motion second to approve the minutes. Any discussion, correction? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right. Did I hear anything about the consent agenda?
So move the consent agenda's entirety.
Got a motion?
So a motion.
Yeah, in a second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, be sure and lower your mask when you're, making a motion or something. All right, so, yeah, that goes for me too. That brings us to ordinance 1654.
I move that we place ordinance 1664 on first reading. 1654 on first reading.
1654, yeah. We got them backwards, so.
Second.
Got a motion second. Roll call.
Councilmember Deets.
Aye.
Bolden.
Aye.
Blevins.
Aye.
Sansing.
Aye.
Ray.
Aye.
Mashburn. Trailer.
Aye.
Twitty.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Ordinance number 1654, an ordinance reclassifying property in the city of Jacksonville, Arkansas, amending ordinance numbers 213 and 238, and the land use map of the city of Jacksonville, Arkansas, declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Okay, any discussion on this? Jimmy, could you give us an explanation of what this is?
Why are we rezoning this?
We had a request by the landowners to put a commercial property on that location. And it was residential. It's been residential for many years. That piece has been the city of Jacksonville for many years. It hasn't developed in decades. So they'd like to do a small commercial development there, and in doing so, they need to get it right between Jacksonville on TP White and Mobile Home Park at Copel.
Okay, is it the land that Fred West used to own?
Right to the north of it. In a budget.
And I swear I can only barely hear you guys. I mean, I turned my volume all the way up, but I'm afraid you guys would get picked up. I guess do they own the commercial lot right before it coming down TP White as well?
That's the Fred West
No.
land. No.
I sent you a map by email. Did you get that?
Oh yeah, I got the map. That's why I know that there's a spot before it that was zoned R0 and was
Yeah,
transferred to
it's owned by
C4, and then
somebody
the
else,
lot
sir.
after it is now wanting to be done to C4. I was just how does this affect the trailer park right next to that area?
Absolutely none.
Wow. While you're doing that, I'm gonna come over here.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve ordinance 1654.
So moved.
Second.
First reading, place on second reading. Roll call.
Councilmember Deets,
Aye.
Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Dancing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Woody,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
No for second reading.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you know this has gone through the planning commission and they've approved it.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. I just wanted to throw that out there, you know, when we get these, they definitely gone through. So I'd entertain a motion to approve on
So
second
moved.
reading and place on third and
Second.
final reading. Okay, got a motion, a second. Roll call.
Councilmember Deets,
Aye.
Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Dancing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Woody,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay, any further discussion? I entertain a motion to approve and adopt 16.
So moved.
Second.
Stephanie, does this have an emergency clause?
It does.
Okay. All right, roll call.
Councilmember Deets,
Aye.
Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Woody,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay, I entertain a motion about the emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Deets,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Dancing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Woody,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay, so that brings us to a little bit of fun part of tonight. We have a presentation in honor of Black History Month. Bishop Bolden, your Councilmember Bolden, do you want to present the plaque to the?
Sure do. I tell you what, in honor of Black History Month, it's very important that we recognize those African-Americans in this great city who have helped to forge and impact the community, to change courses and help people believe that they are successful no matter what. And tonight we're going to honor two individuals. One of them I worked personally with in the process of us getting our own school district back in the day. And then we're going to honor her husband also. The two honorees tonight will be Reverend Kenneth McGee and Mrs. Marlene Jones McGee. And if you put your hands together for that. We see that they're all on Zoom, and but we're going to give them an opportunity to speak if they have time. The one to Reverend Kenneth McGee says this: the seal of Jacksonville presented to Reverend Kenneth McGee in honor of Black History Month. We recognize you as being a builder in this great city of Jacksonville, building many facilities in our community. Thank you for over 40 years of dedicated service. And it's presented to him in 2021. Then the next one we have is for Miss Marlene Jones McGee. It reads, in honor of Black History Month, we recognize you as making an impact in many areas of our city. Thank you for your dedicated service. And we use her favorite quote: let each esteem others better than themselves. 2021, we thank you so much for everything you do. And if you're on Zoom, Miss McGee or Reverend McGee would like to have words, we'll give you time to say something. Okay. All right then. Well, we thank you. Put your hands
Bishop
together.
Bolden, Bishop Bolden, she is on Zoom, but she has her mic muted. This is her daughter, so I don't know if she'll know how to unmute her mic.
Little girl is just the one.
Okay.
There she goes. 2 plus 3. It was 2 plus 3.
Okay. Now, do you hear me now?
We hear you now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good evening. This is To God Be the Glory. Thank you all so much for this recognition. I just love the Lord. First of all, I love God's people. This has taken me by sure surprise, but we are just so grateful that you guys have selected us for this recognition. On behalf of my husband, who has worked and now he doesn't talk, but because of the different strokes that he's had, but we have weathered the storm. And I have always said, Bishop Bolden, to all of you, the council members, to God be the glory. Thank you so much for the work that you do, first of all, and allowing me to join forces with you all to strive to make a difference in the Jacksonville area. I didn't grow up in Jacksonville. I married a wonderful man, and he brought me to Jacksonville, and we raised our children here. We have grandchildren attending school here, and I've just worked on several different committees. This is just a great honor. Thank you all so much, and I will forever cherish it. To God be the glory. You all be blessed. Thank you. Total surprise.
Really appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Marlon, for making it happen. All right.
Our next one is introducing of our JP District 10. I see that she's on.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself and tell us whatever it is you want to say. Can you hear me, Christina?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Bob Johnson and the council, especially to Tara Smith. I believe she's on. So she's on for allowing me to come on. Okay. I am Christina KG Gully. I am the newly elected justice of District 10, which consists of North Little Rock and parts of Jacksonville. I look forward to working with some of you hopefully soon. I've been busy with my constituents in the Jacksonville area. I'm on 161. So the rest of you council members in person. I know I've spoken with Ms. Mashburn in the past, and of course you, Mayor Johnson, in regards to a function I had during my campaign. But you guys, if you need me, I can give you my phone number and my email address, because one of my goals is to, kind of get to know more people in the Jacksonville area. My phone number is 501-744-0085, and my email address is excuse me, is KG, my first and last initial in golden line at yahoo.com. Here recently, I started hosting virtual meetings. I will be doing that periodically. I'm not going to do them every month. Basically, what I'm doing is bringing forth speakers that I feel that that can bring information as far as resources for the community during this time of pandemic that can help us, help the community. Anyways, again, I'm Christina KG Gully. If anybody have any questions, I'm ready to ask.
Those of you that don't know, District 10 goes all the way to Graham Road. And
Right. Correct. District 10 goes from District 10 goes from Argenta, downtown North Little Rock, all the way up to high school. Then it goes from Highway 161, which consists of the McAlma, of course, Big Jeter, backside of Jacksonville to Graham Road, and then Highway 167 to the right of the interstate. And like, I guess it was Mayor Johnson that was speaking. It does cut off at Graham Road. So it's a pretty big district. I don't know if it's going to change because, you know, this year we're going to have the redistricting going on. So I don't know if it's going to change. It may enlarge it. It may, you know, take some away. I don't know, but it's a fairly large district.
Christina, this is Barbara Mashburn. I just wanted to welcome you aboard and let you know that you've got our support and anything you need.
Well, thank you. I will be reaching out to you soon, Ms. Mashburn. When I had my virtual meeting, I did send you an email. I didn't get a response. You know, people are so tired of Zoom meetings, and that's why I said I'm not going to do one every month. You know, just maybe every, you know, periodically. In addition to out in the neighborhoods, you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, we've been affected by COVID, and I'm an outdoors person and involved with things. People that know me, they will tell you I'm very community focused, you know, and out trying to help people. And this has been kind of a rough time for me, you know, having to kind of pull back and stuff, you know, but I still reach out to my leaders. I stay in communication with them, and I do go out in the district. I go out and see what needs to be done. You know, I look at it like it's a job. I was put here to do a job, and I take my job seriously. And I feel, you know, every elected official should have an accountability piece, you know, where it shows what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? So my goal is just to stay involved and get to know you guys in Jacksonville.
Thank you. It's an honor to meet you this way, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you, Mayor Johnson.
You're more than welcome. One other one I don't know is Mike Green on. I sent Mike an invitation to get on, and they're busy, but he did send me information of when Blade and Barrel's going to open for Mary.
Thank you, Bob.
Blade and Barrel is almost ready to open its doors, barring any unforeseen. We're expected to start soft opening no later than March the 9th and open to the public March 11th. So that's for Mike, and he didn't know. He said they were very busy. He didn't know if he'd get on here tonight, but he sent me that. So I said, well, at least send me something so I can tell him when. But if you haven't seen it, it's gorgeous. It's really pretty in there. Okay, I think that's out of our little stuff now. Now we have ordinance 1653. I entertain a motion to place 1653 on the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, second. Roll call.
Councilmember Deets,
Aye.
Bolden.
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Sansing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Twitty,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines,
Aye.
All right, ordinance number 1653, an ordinance amending procedure and form of regular city council meetings for the city of Jacksonville, Arkansas, amending ordinance numbers 132 and 532, specifically codified as Jacksonville Municipal Code section 204010 and 204020, declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Okay, I want to, let's kind of discuss this. You know, we're supposed to pass rules saying we decided to do an ordinance that will just make it permanent. So we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order. If you want to turn something in, you have to do it by noon Friday before the regular scheduled meeting.
Housekeeping measure.
Yeah, it's just housekeeping, make the state happy. Okay, any discussion on it? Okay, I entertain a motion.
Before we go to a motion, I do believe section 2 is actually covered in section 1 of ordinance 1606. Is that correct?
Stephanie, you'd have to help me.
Parts of it, yes. It's being amended, and so 1606 wasn't expressly identified, but the section 3, where it says ordinances in conflict with or hereby replaced, covers that, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah,
Did that answer your question?
it does.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to approve on first reading, placed on second reading.
So moved.
Second.
A motion second, roll call.
Councilmember Deeds,
Aye.
Aye.
Levens,
We can't hear you, Brian.
You're muted.
Councilmember Blevins,
He's working on it.
Aye. Sorry, I didn't know I was muted.
Sansing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Woody,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay, I entertain a motion to approve on second reading and place on third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion on, it just kind of sets our rules and guidelines that we're going to follow. All right. Roll call.
Councilmember Deeds,
Aye.
Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Sansing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Twitty,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay, I entertain a motion approving and adopt 1653.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Deeds,
Aye.
Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Sansing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Twitty,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay, I entertain a motion on emergency clause.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Deeds,
Oh, there is one.
Aye.
Bolden,
Aye.
Levens,
Aye.
Sansing,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Mashburn,
Aye.
Trailer,
Aye.
Twitty,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Raines.
Aye.
Okay. That brings us to resolution 803. And that's going to be a presentation from Johnson Controls that,
Mr. Chair, I move that we read resolutions,
yes.
803.
Okay, got a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. Stephanie?
Resolution 803, a resolution approving and granting authorization to Mayor Johnson and other officials to enter into a project development agreement with Johnson Controls Incorporated and for other purposes.
You got a microphone, Alex? Or you gonna come up here?
I'm gonna sit at the desk if I can.
You can.
And we've got the presentation up.
And while you're speaking, pull your mask down so that we can, so it records better.
Yes, sir.
We had what, a 2.5 hour meeting?
At least, yes, sir.
Yeah, and well, we had a lot of questions and
That was our second meeting.
oh, yes. So tell us what you're gonna do for us and why we ought to do it.
Yes, very good. If you'll put it in presentation mode.
Council, good evening. My name is Alex Ray. I am the Director of Business Development in Arkansas for Johnson Controls Incorporated, specifically for our Performance Infrastructure Division. Johnson Controls is a large corporation based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, been operating in the United States since 1885. We've been operating continuously in Little Rock since 1906. Most people that are familiar with Johnson Controls as an organization are really familiar with the majority of our brands that we use in the commercial building space. York Air Conditioning, Simplex Grinnell Fire and Security, Tyco Security. Those are all brands of Johnson Controls. So if you see Simplex or Tyco or York HVAC, that's what this organization is. I specifically work for a division of Johnson Controls out of the Little Rock office. Our office in Little Rock is off Colonel Glenn, specifically focused on public sector infrastructure. What we do at Johnson Controls Performance Infrastructure is we work with cities and counties, school districts, state agencies, and colleges and universities across the state, specifically focused on identifying ways that these public sector entities can utilize any number of procurement models, alternative procurement vehicles that the legislature has made available to fund capital improvements, facility improvements, deferred maintenance upgrades, capital equipment upgrades, really with a primary focus on doing it by reducing the cost of operating the business, reducing the cost of operating the city, driving energy efficiency, driving operational efficiency, and then leveraging those savings, those cost savings that are currently being spent by the city to fund much needed deferred maintenance and capital improvement in the city's facilities. That's what we do across Arkansas. We've done it in a lot of places. Mayor Johnson was familiar with our work. He was familiar with the concept, having done it when he was at the Quorum Court in Pulaski County. And we approached him about, it was at least a year and a half ago. I almost want to say 2 years, but I can't believe that's true. But I think it was at least December before last, and talked to him about what we did and opportunities that we might serve the city of Jacksonville. And he said, okay, let's do an analysis. Let's find out if there's an opportunity whereby the city of Jacksonville could utilize a performance contract to fund needs out of the capital budget and to reduce the operating cost of the city. So one of the procurement vehicles, one of the alternative procurement vehicles that the legislature has made available to municipal government is a procurement model called performance contracting. And it is a model where the city of Jacksonville partners with a firm like Johnson Controls, and we bear the risk and burden of helping the city to drive down the energy costs, drive down the operating costs to operate the city buildings, and then use those cost savings to fund the project. Specifically, as you see on your screen here, the model is fairly simple. You have your current operational costs, which are made up of energy costs, O&M spend in maintaining HVAC equipment or roofs or windows or lighting or whatever that may be. And the idea is that in a performance contract, it's budget neutral. By law, by design, it is a cash flow neutral, budget neutral procurement model where we implement a project that reduces the energy cost, the operational costs from the existing appropriations, and then we leverage those savings to fund the project so that ideally the project pays for itself. It's self-funded by the savings. That's why we call it a performance contract and why we call it budget neutral. It is self-funded with savings. In Arkansas particularly, we call it guaranteed performance contracting because per Arkansas statute, if Johnson Controls commits to the city of Jacksonville that through this process, you will save X number of dollars, say it's $100,000. If I tell the city, hey, you do this project and we're going to save you $100,000 a year out of your existing budget, and that's the money we're going to use to fund the project, I am contractually obligated to the city that you realize those savings. Any shortfall in a project is made up by Johnson Controls through what's called a shortfall payment. So if I tell the city you're going to save $100,000 a year and we come up on year one, you only save 70, I have to present the city a $30,000 shortfall check to make you whole. Under Arkansas law, it's called guaranteed performance contracting. That's the model in most states. There are some states that allow it as estimated performance contracting, but that's not the case here. I say the law because this is an alternative procurement vehicle that has been used extensively around state government. This model was available to K-12 in the early 2000s. And it was used extensively across Arkansas K-12 before some partnership money was made available. And in 2013, the State General Assembly, the legislature, completely overhauled the program, wrote new program rules, amended quite a bit of the legislation to make it more accessible, easier, more efficient for public sector entities to utilize the process. In 2013, they wrote a specific piece of legislation enabling K-12, high ed and state agencies into the K-12 program. Prior to 2013, only really K-12 was using the process. Well, in 2013 to 2015, higher education in Arkansas used it. It went gangbusters, used the heck out of it. And so in 2015, the legislature came back again and enabled local government, municipalities and counties. So prior to 2015, this was not an alternative procurement model available to county government. And since that time, since 2015, it has been used pretty well across the state. We've done quite a few county government projects. We have done city government projects in the past, municipal government projects. But what the idea is, it's an opportunity to reduce cost of operating the city, to drive energy efficiency, operational efficiency, drive sustainability, which is great. And everybody's all about operating the government more efficiently, but then using those efficiency savings to fund capital need that the city has in the budget, that Mr. Oakley or any other department heads are going to come to you and say, hey, I need money in the next fiscal year budget. I need money for CapEx in FY22 to replace a boiler, an air handler, the lighting, a roof, windows, whatever it is. And a 25-year-old air conditioner, you know, a 25-year-old boiler, a 15-year-old, whatever that might be. So it's an opportunity to extract significant savings in a budget neutral model and leverage it to fund things that you're going to spend money on anyways. You're going to spend money on boilers and chillers when they replace. You're eventually going to spend capital dollars on the upgrade. So if we can use efficiency to drive improvement in the deferred maintenance of the city, what that ultimately does is it frees up cash in the treasury for you to go spend on other things I cannot help you with, that the law is not designed for, like public safety, roads and bridges, programming, those things that are other duties of the government. I talked about, so what we did is we performed an analysis. That's what this report is today. We contacted the mayor, we worked with the mayor and Mr. Oakley's team, and last fall, we analyzed 24 months of utility bills. We pulled 24 months of data. We walked almost all of your facilities one day with some of Mr. Oakley and some of his team. And we were in the city facilities, and we generated a report to the mayor and the rest of the leadership, department heads, as to, is there an opportunity to leverage a performance contract in the city of Jacksonville? Is there an opportunity where this could be an efficient tool to address some needs, some liabilities for the city treasury? And the answer is yes, with a performance contract. So this is the findings of that report. And we met, as the mayor said, extensively in January, and we came back in December, and we came back in January and met extensively with several members of the mayor's team to talk about this in great detail. We were in the weeds, as we like to say, pretty long, 2.5 hours at least. But when we evaluated a project, which is what we've brought to you today and what the mayor's asking the city council to take action on as next steps to continue to investigate and allow this project to become a reality, we were looking to address two things as we evaluated, was this an efficient and a potentially effective process? We were looking at how a performance contract could reduce operating costs of the city and use those reduced operational costs to drive citywide infrastructure improvements, deferred maintenance improvements. Specifically, we were trying to address 4 key concerns. Would this project address mechanical inefficiency and system obsolescence? Is there an opportunity to take a lot of equipment out of the field that is at or near end of useful life? Could it be an opportunity to use capital funds to make facility improvements without asking for new revenues or new capital funds? How could this, at the end of the day, provide a safer, more comfortable environment for the city stakeholders to do business with the city and the city staff to operate the public service for the city? And then how do we essentially address what are escalating costs of operation to operate the city buildings? So those were the lenses that we were instructed to look through as we evaluated the efficacy of a project. And based off our assessment, we would recommend what we call facility improvement measures. Is there an opportunity to leverage a performance contract to address facility improvement measures, or FIMs? And based off our analysis, the answer is yes. And they fit into these 6 primary buckets. There is a significant opportunity to address what we would citywide, what we would call an enterprise-wide LED lighting improvement project, to take the entire city enterprise, all city buildings that are not already LED, to a standardized platform of interior and exterior LED lighting, which drives significant operational cost savings and energy efficiency. There is a great need for the city department heads who are responsible for their specific facility or facilities to have one singular standardized platform of energy management controls so that the city buildings operate with the standard of energy efficiency and setback controls, night setbacks, just like your home. Probably if you have a Nest thermostat or a Honeywell thermostat, if it's empty in the wintertime, you turn the thermostat down. In the summertime, you turn the thermostat up. Commercial buildings should operate the same way. And this best practice is that that's automated through a centralized network control system where the department heads can, from a central point of access, computer, laptop, iPad, whatever it is, operate their facilities, operate their thermostat, operate their infrastructure. There is an opportunity to address a significant amount of inefficient plumbing fixtures and low efficiency fixtures, water conservation, urinals, toilets, sinks, kitchen devices, opportunities to reduce the cost of operating the water consumption for the city, and that sustainability piece. But what we call building envelope, we evaluated the efficacy of solar PV in an installation for the city. And then a big thing that we were asked to address, and this is the big deal, this is where we're moving moving the ball the furthest, is identifying what is a significant amount of HVAC equipment around the city that is at or beyond useful life. If we can leverage the project to avoid an incredibly capital intensive need or a capital liability whereby the city council is approving emergency funds or emergency resolutions to replace HVAC equipment or spending significant dollars in the coming capital budget, it's going to be an HVAC. So if I have an opportunity to reduce the demand on your treasury in this budget neutral model, I want to do that because I want to free up the money that you do have in the treasury to go do other things beyond air conditioning, because there's a significant need for it. You have a little bit of LED throughout the city, but ideally we're going to move to one singular standardized platform inside and out, making retrofits to fixtures, adding new fixtures throughout. Lighting is one of those things that we consider low-hanging fruit. When we evaluate a holistic project that is all of the things I've talked about, lighting is one of those things that pays for itself very quickly and then drives extra savings to fund other things, other major capital projects like HVAC equipment. So moving the city to a standard LED light fixture that, the fire department's done an excellent job. They've already got quite a bit of LED. They've invested money already. Trying to match that standard at an enterprise level citywide is not only going to drive significant energy savings, but we know it reduces the overall O&M burden because the lighting fixtures that we're installing, our lighting partners are tier 1 lighting manufacturers. It's Philips, GE, Sylvania, Hubble, Cree, firms that are going to put a 10 or 5 or 10 year warranty on their LED fixtures. A big part of it is LED, we know specifically drives significant improved light levels and productivity, but specific to municipal government and K-12, it provides what we call a standardization of equity or a standard equitization, because there are not buildings in the city or departments in the city that are really well lit and really well funded, and other buildings or buildings that provide a public service that are poorly lit, dimly lit. We provide a standardization of lighting environment, an equitization of the facilities that are delivering a public service, both for the stakeholders and for the staff and team. And then a big thing is the standardization of stock, so the department heads are not keeping dozens and dozens of light fixtures and ballasts and bulbs. All of that goes away through the end result here. And then we know it drives a significant safety factor for exterior lighting, parking lot lighting, and all the facilities, driving increased safety and efficiency there. Exterior lighting is a big one. There's quite a bit of exterior lighting around the city that's CFL or metal halide or high pressure sodium. Exterior lighting is the biggest energy consumer because they run every night of the year, 365 days a year. So moving those to LED brings all the same efficiency improvements and operational improvements, but this is where we really drive improved light levels for safety for the facilities that are open, serving the citizens of Jacksonville into the evening and darker hours. We talked about HVAC equipment. There's a pretty limited mixture of new and old. And what I mean by that is the city doesn't have a lot of HVAC equipment that's in the middle. You've got quite a bit of HVAC equipment around the city that's relatively new, a few years old, and really the balance of it beyond that is at or beyond end of useful life, which for us, at or beyond end of useful life is 15 plus years, generally 20 years or more, depending on what it is, if it's a boiler or small tonnage piece of equipment or large tonnage. As we evaluated this, we looked at all the city facilities. They're spread out all over. Certainly, there's a large concentration in the community center next door, in the aquatic center, the senior citizen center. But the HVAC is one of those things that it's an opportunity to drive significant energy savings, cost savings. But this is a chance to essentially, what I like to say is drag off the table what's going to be capital liability in the next several fiscal years, because you're going to replace this equipment preemptively or reactively. And it's certainly always, it's a well-established fact that replacing HVAC equipment reactively in the middle of the night on a Saturday with double time or time and a half or sometime other than before it breaks down is certainly more expensive. There are a couple of things that we would look at. Is there some design inefficiency or some operational inefficiency of some of the equipment that's just got old? I mean, it's inefficient by age, but also it's just generally older in terms of there's lots of problems. There's lots of capital need going out of the treasury to fund this need. Another thing is what we call test and balance or retro commissioning, just to make sure the buildings are operating at maximum efficiency. And then a big thing is there is a significant amount of R22 refrigerant or Freon in all of this equipment. And R22 is no longer manufactured. It was outlawed by the EPA because of its high ozone factor in the middle of the last decade. And around 2017 or 18, they stopped what's called virgin production. It's not manufactured anymore. So the only R22 available on the market is reclaimed. It has become a commodity. A 25-gallon drum can of R22 2 years ago was $600. A year before that, it was $400. Now it's anywhere from $600 to $800. And that will continue to escalate, which means every time a piece of equipment in the city's got a Freon leak, you're going to pay an incredible premium because that refrigerant is no longer available except for reclaim. So great opportunity here, but also it's gonna bring a significant amount of thermal comfort. The buildings are consistently comfortable for the inhabitants and occupants. It's an easy pickup. It's a win-win. So in terms of the facilities that are going to get the most work based off of the population of equipment, it's the city hall, the community center, the public safety complex, a little bit, not very much, but some, because that building's relatively new. Some of the older fire stations, and then certainly the senior center. The building automation system, there's very little networked automation right now. Most of the thermostats around the city are what we call standalone thermostats. They're some mercury thermostats. There's limited to no night setback. There's no ability to operate those thermostats remotely. And there's no visibility into a hot or cold call. Hey, my office is hot. Would you see what's going on? Instead of Jimmy or any of the other department directors just pulling it up on their iPad, they've got to get in the vehicle, drive to wherever that is and look at it and to touch it. That is not the best practice for operating commercial facilities. What we know about energy management controls is obviously it drives significant efficiency and thermal comfort and cost savings. But when you have equipment that is automated through network controls that's operating on a setback schedule of occupied and unoccupied, there is certainly an inherent value that increases the useful life of the equipment. Because most of these thermostats, as you see pictured, are those kind of thermostats that somebody sets to 68 on the Friday of a Labor Day weekend because it's hot, and they leave it and they go home, and for the entirety of Labor Day weekend, that thermostat bumps at 68 degrees. Or at worst case scenario, they come in Tuesday morning, it's frozen up, and you've got to call somebody. You got to call a service company to come in and fix it and pay for that cost. It drives, when we don't quantify that, because that's very, how can you quantify that? But we know that if the equipment's operating on a routine schedule, it expands the useful life of that equipment. So moving that to a standardized system, that's enough. Energy controls are like lighting. They drive significant cost savings to subsidize other things like HVAC, that there's less energy savings associated with it. There's a good opportunity here to do what we call building weatherization. That's doors and windows, eaves, insulation, sealing the buildings. These pictures are actually from a project we did with Washington County in Fayetteville. These are pictures of the Washington County Courthouse in Fayetteville. And you just see the thermal images of where there's a significant amount of heated and cooled air escaping the building. Those are dollars. Those are tax dollars going right out the door, literally out the eaves of the building. This is one of those things that we do that it drives significant thermal comfort. It provides more comfortable buildings to operate in. They're more energy efficient. This is a very inexpensive improvement. We get a lot of juice for the squeeze. And a few other possible things. We talked about water conservation. There's certainly a need to reduce water conservation where it's cost effective, knowing the city doesn't pay a high burden for water. But if we can provide enhanced sustainability of that natural resource, we're all better off, and it certainly drives modernity of the aesthetics of the toilets and urinals and sinks. The building envelope, that's different than building weatherization. There's a little bit of opportunity to look at probably a roof replacement or two, and that's something we do pretty routinely is evaluate taking care of that building envelope need. And then we evaluated solar. That was something that we had a long discussion with the team about. Solar is really popular right now. There's a lot going on. You see it a lot in the paper in Arkansas business. It's every week or month, there's announcements in the paper about a new solar array being built here, there, or yonder by a city or a county or a school district. That is really a component of some pieces of legislation that the General Assembly passed in the 2019 session that lowered the barrier to entry to the public sector. Previously, there was really only one way for a public sector entity to utilize solar PV to offset cost. Now there are a couple of different models, and the legislature just made it easier. It's not a question of, is solar all of a sudden more cost effective for the public sector? No, it's been cost effective for some time. You just had a pretty high barrier to entry because of the way the statute was written. So we evaluated, what does a solar PV model look like? And we know that there's an opportunity to build about a 2 megawatt solar array on city-owned property for the city's total benefit, to essentially produce your own power to offset your consumption of your electrical utilities for your Entergy customers. This is what that 2 megawatts looks like to scale. This is not the proposed site. This is just some city-owned land because we wanted to show the staff what would that look like at scale. And we've got another picture of it down south of the athletics fields, Dupree Complex. Solar is an incredible opportunity to drive significant cost savings because at that point you're producing your own power. You are zeroing out your consumption with generation that's going back in the grid, and Entergy gives you credit for that generation to a zero balance. Commercial and industrial customers cannot overproduce. You can't overbuild it to your net benefit. Residential clients can, but commercial and industrial customers are not allowed to. But we are allowed to build them to zero consumption. If you consume 2 megawatts a year, we're going to build you a 2 megawatt array so you are generating your own electricity. The value of that is that for customers that have your Entergy rate structure, general services rate structure that we know you do in Jacksonville, based off of multiple projects we've done in Entergy territory, solar is what we call cash flow positive. It pays for itself early on, and it drives excess savings into the project to fund things where there may not be savings to pay for everything, like a roof. A roof is not, they're not very energy, there's not a lot of energy spend with a roof, but it's a major capital need. Chillers and boilers have a very high payback on energy. So if we can build a project that blends the overall payback, that's what we aim to do. Okay, so how did your buildings do? How did the city fare? What are we talking about? It sounds great conceptually. Give me numbers and substance. So these are the facilities that we audited. These are the facilities we evaluated. These are not, it's not every one. This is not every single one of the city facilities, but this is certainly an exhaustive list of your major consumers. And you can see there are a few holes in the data. We're missing natural gas in a few buildings, but they're not huge buildings, so that wasn't a big deal. You see here at the end of the row, there's a single column called EUI. That stands for Energy Utilization Index. That is a score that the Department of Energy Information Administration gives to buildings based off of a national baseline for a amount of energy consumed per square foot. It's not cost per square foot, it's how many thermal units of kWh and natural gas does it use to operate your buildings? And they get that EUI score. Well, what we do is we rack and stack that score against the commercial building energy conservation score that is a national average of other EUIs. And so you see the city's EUI scores and then what should be the median trend of other national facilities. So as you look through there, we know that a swimming pool or social meeting hall has a national EUI score, a national median of 56 or 51. And our community center in Jacksonville has an EUI of 96. We'd like to see a public safety building in the low 60s and the public safety facility and fire station 3 is not a very big fire station, but public safety is well above that. That's not all that means. That's not a statement on any member of the staff, on any member of the administration. That's not a statement on the operators of the buildings or the department heads of who operate those. That's a statement relative to the energy efficiency of the buildings. And that's made up of all of the above: lighting, HVAC, controls, natural gas, electricity, how weather tight the buildings are. Is there energy leaking out of the building? So we're constantly running equipment to keep them cool, keep them up. And that's a very comprehensive score. What that tells us is that you've got some winners. I mean, you've got some great opportunities. So the senior center's got an EUI of 25 when the national average is 56. There's opportunities here. I mean, I don't go anywhere where there's not winners and losers. I was in 2 school districts today. I was in a university today. We've done university projects that are just a few miles from here, and they had buildings that were beating the national average and buildings that were embarrassingly over the national average. That's the nature of the business. What this tells us is there's opportunity. There's opportunity to address an enterprise-wide project to drive significant savings. Okay, so what do those savings look like? So as of FY19, we didn't pull FY20 data for obvious reasons, and most of the buildings were fairly empty through a lot of 2020. We pulled FY18 and FY19 data, and in FY19, the city spent on electricity and natural gas, no water, about $332,000 in expenditures for gas and power. What I'm here to tell you today is Johnson Controls I'm incredibly comfortable representing to you on the record, and we've done this again in great detail with the staff over 2 different workshops, that we believe a performance contract at the city of Jacksonville can easily affect that consumption by 21%. That we can reduce the city's utility costs and consumption by around 21%, which is right in the median. Our projects in Arkansas range between 19 and 21%. So that's right on par with most of we have some projects that are a little above and a little over, but that's just right. That's the majority of the portfolio. 21% consumption reduction out of your existing appropriations represents $70,000 a year. So what I'm here telling you is, having been in your city buildings for, a few hours, and having done what we describe as a 30,000-foot Mach 1 high-speed pass, just doing this at our risk at no cost to the city, I'm very comfortable saying that conservatively, we can reduce the city's operating cost by $70,000. The $1.4 million, the idea is that we take that $70,000 and we use it to fund the project. We use those savings to fund a project scope. The law allows for a 20-year payback, up to 20 years. That's the statutory limit. So if you take $70,000, you say, I'm going to do a 10-year project, we've just created efficiencies. We've monetized efficiencies in the existing appropriations to the tune of, at 10 years, $700,000. This is bar napkin math. We're not escalating it. We're not calculating for depreciation and inflation, but just very simply at a high level, at 10 years, it's $700,000. At 20 years, which I've only ever done one project that wasn't 20 years, it was 15. Everybody does 20 because they want to get the most scope out of their savings. At $70,000 a year, 20 years, we've just created and monetized efficiency that will fund almost $1.5 million in project improvements. So this is not new money. I'm not asking you to divert revenue. I'm not asking you to raise revenue. This is a monetization of efficiencies to your existing appropriations. So very simple, $1.4 million. We're there, no problem. That's easy. That's probably, based off what we do, that's very conservative. That's probably minus 5%. That's kind of our trending average, but that's very easy based off having done our due diligence to tell you today. And as we recommended to the staff today, there is absolutely a project here. And then we include other revenue streams. So the law allows for projects to be funded out of three buckets: energy savings, operations and maintenance savings, as already described, and what we call capital avoidance. The majority of our projects, the lion's share of them, are funded with energy savings, utility savings. But there is a maintenance savings component. There's an operations and maintenance savings component. Because if Mr. Oakley and the rest of the department heads are spending, $10,000 a piece on lighting material, new light bulbs, new fluorescent bulbs, new ballasts, new fixtures a year, and we come in and put an enterprise-wide standardized LED project in the entire city with a 10-year warranty from GE, that $10,000 a year per department in lighting material, that's an O&M cost that no longer has to be experienced by the city. That's an O&M savings. it really comes from two areas, lighting and then HVAC. You know, Mr. Oakley's got some pieces of equipment that every time they break down, he's fixing it, or he's buying a new compressor or condenser. He's calling, you know, Middleton Heat and Air or Kennedy Heat and Air, whoever. Well, we go back and we generally look through ideally 3 years of cost accounting and say, okay, Mr. Oakley, you've spent $50,000 a year. Where is that from? Okay, well, it's these 5 units. Okay, well, if I go take those out of the field, you're not going to experience that severe of an O&M. So that's O&M savings. So simply for your edification, I think it's probably very conservative to say, based off your facilities, that $20,000 a year is real O&M savings. I think that's incredibly conservative based off of us doing this for a living every day. But for the sake of simple math, if you take $20,000 a year in O&M savings, at 10 years, that's $200,000. At 20 years, it's an additional $400,000 in savings to fund scope. And then, so that's an opportunity to take the energy savings and enhance it to drive more project scope at your discretion. The energy savings, that's not really up for debate. That Johnson Controls is going to come in here and tell you, hey, this is a 32-watt light fixture. I know what you pay Entergy for a kilowatt hour. I'm going to put in a 9-watt LED. I can do that math pretty quickly. We just have to agree on how many hours a year that light fixture runs. All of these other revenue streams, those are all negotiated with our client. Those are completely owner negotiated. We don't swag those numbers. We like to see them based off some historical trending spend. And then the other one is capital avoidance. This is one where when our customers elect to contribute capital, they elect to put capital into the project to fund scope that won't pay for itself with savings. For example, if we say, hey, this project will pay for itself up to $2 million. This will fund $2 million in savings. We do an audit and you say, well, I have $2.5 million worth of need. Well, I don't dictate the scope to you. The city leadership says, okay, well, I have to go cut $500,000 and leave it on the cutting room floor, and I'll have to pay for that later. In some instances, the law allows for entities to say, hey, I want to do $100,000 worth of additional scope. I need to go do a roof on the community center. It's $100,000. Instead of writing a check from the treasury for $100,000 to a roofing company, we're going to let you do it in the project, and I'm going to pay for it $10,000 a year over the next 10 years. An example of where we did that was Washington County. The county government in Fayetteville, Washington County Quorum Court, they got hit with a $500,000 fire alarm upgrade that the county fire marshal said they had to do immediately. It was several buildings. And so the county Quorum Court had two options: close those facilities, one of which was the courthouse, or spend $500,000 to upgrade their fire alarm. So they approached us as we were developing the project and said, can we include that in the job? We said, of course. So when you look at their cash flow, it's $500,000 that they contribute $50,000 a year for the first 10 years of the 20-year project. Because what they got to do is, instead of writing a $500,000 check to address that capital need, they put $50,000 a year in today's dollars over 10 years. So that's where we do a lot of roofs and windows. We do a lot of things in that column where there's significant capital scope but no savings. It's just another vehicle where the city and these public entities can use it to address. For the sake of illustration, I put, okay, $10,000 a year. Again, $10,000 a year, 20 years, $200,000. So with those few additions, let's say there's $20,000 a year in O&M savings and $10,000 a year out of the treasury to do a roof or do some backup generators or do window upgrades. Okay, that's where that $2 million comes from. You've stacked up the revenue, utility savings, a little bit of O&M savings. We threw in a little capital. Now we've got $2 million worth of scope that we can pay for over 20 years of savings. That Johnson Controls guarantees. The solar is not included in that. Use of that $332,000, $293,000 is electricity. So if we build a solar array that offsets your electricity consumption at zero, it'll save the city $293,000 a year. In the first 15 or 20 years, whatever the term is, when that project's paid for, the savings is originally paying for the solar installation, but then the solar installation is paid for, and that $293,000 is the city's, because you're producing your own electricity. You're not, I mean, you're on the grid. You're not off the grid, but you're generating electricity that you're getting credit for at a zero balance. And the reason I put 2.93 million is the statutory limit of these projects are 20 years. Somebody's going to ask me, how long is solar good for? The solar infrastructure that we install in our projects, which you can drive up to ASU Newport. If you've been to ASU Newport in recent history, they've got 5 acres of solar array in the back 40 behind the student center. That was a performance contract with Johnson Controls. If you've been to Jefferson County in recent history and driven by the Jefferson County Courthouse, they've got a big solar array out north of the Juvenile Detention Center. Performance, those were Entergy customers. This is why I can tell you, I know Entergy customers on your rate schedule, solar drives extra savings. It pays for itself and drives free cash to do additional scope. The infrastructure that we install, because if I represent to the city that you're going to save $70,000 a year for 20 years, I will be contractually obligated by law that you realize those savings on an annual reconciliation. So I'm not beholden to low bid. The law allows me to put in the most efficient and effective gear because I'm at risk for 20 years that efficiency, that infrastructure performs. The solar infrastructure we install is called, it's graded, it's called tier 1. The solar industry grades the quality of their gear in tiers. What we install is tier 1 gear, tier 1 modules, tier 1 inverters that are manufactured by highly large reputable firms like Kyocera. The solar, we're about to install solar for Saline County, for the Saline County government in the same fashion. They're going to be Kyocera panels. Canada Solar, Sun Solar, these companies that they guarantee that the solar, these tier 1 solar modules, they have a production guarantee of 30 years. So the modules that are hanging in Newport right now, that are in Jefferson County, they're going to be in Saline County. My project's paid for in 20 years. But Kyocera and these companies provide a production generation guarantee to warranty the output of these arrays for 3 decades. That's not to say that they're going to, at year 31 and a half, they're going to collapse on the ground. But at that point, they reach a level of degradation that it's time to refresh the modules. So if that number, the $2.93 million, if you're spending and again, this is real simple math. This is not a complex idea. This at $293,000 a year, if this thing's paid for in 20 years and you have another decade, a third of life of guaranteed production from this array, at $293,000 a year, that's $2.93 million in savings that the city will avoid by leveraging solar PV. So we think it's we think it's wonderful. We love doing it. Our customers love it. It's happening all over the state. And we specifically love it for somebody like the city of Jacksonville because we know that all the intrinsic benefits are there and it will produce extra savings to fund additional scope because it's cash flow positive. It pays for itself early, less than 20 years. What? Yeah. This is your project. This is, so folks, I talked about Johnson Controls in the beginning. We generally don't like talking about ourselves in the beginning, but the mayor, he didn't just tee me up just like I was hoping he would tell you how great we are and how much experience he has with us and how much he's been around us over the years. Johnson Controls for 135 years has been in the building technologies business. This is our namesake. Warren S. Johnson invented the electric room thermostat. And for the last 135 years, our business has been building technology. I'm one of 110,000 employees that operate across 5,000 locations in 152 countries. I'm one of 160 that work in 8 offices across Arkansas, of which we've been operating continuously in Little Rock since 1906. We helped the federal government pioneer this model. Johnson Controls is the largest and oldest performance contracting provider in the world. We are the market leader in North America and have been for the 33 years we've been in this business of the 135 years we've been in business in the United States. We have about it's probably closer to 660 active projects today. This slide needs to be updated. This was from January. 16 of those are active in Arkansas today. And when I say active, I don't mean we've done 16 projects. I mean, an active project is in construction or payback. We have another dozen projects or so that have completed payback. They're done. They did their 15 or 20 years. The reason I'm so confident in telling you that $70,000 is real, it's conservative, and I've got no problem being on the public record saying we're going to guarantee that plus some, is because of the more than 3,400 performance contracts we've done since 1983 across the United States, about a third of those are in local government. Municipal government is a lot of our bread and butter in the United States, in North America. And of the more than 3,400 projects, the total value of outstanding guarantees that Johnson Controls is currently at risk for is almost $6.4 billion. That's our liability today. That's what we're in the wind for. Of that $6.4 billion, we pay shortfalls. We don't get out of shortfalls. There's no slippery way out from under it. We run an annual shortfall service of about 1%. It's really about 0.9%, but 1% of the time a year, we're paying shortfalls because at the end of the day, this is a human enterprise. And if my engineers fail to do their due diligence, you have transferred that risk from you and your directors to your private sector partner. And I'm incentivized to ensure that we do our job right so that you're paid, we're paid, the citizens get their value, and you're properly conserving the resources of the region and the funds of the taxpayers. So that's why we can just look at your data, rack and stack it against your colleagues in the region and in the nation, and spend 3 hours in your buildings and say, hey, y'all, we're real comfortable saying that number is real. Because this is what we do for a living. And there's a reason that we are the oldest and largest in the business and continue to be year after year, because we're very good at this and we stand behind what we do. That's another big deal. So most of you have never met me, you've never seen me, you've never heard of me. My parents I grew up north of Gravel Ridge. I spent the first half of my childhood in Gravel Ridge, and now my parents live up Highway 107 behind Balmina Baptist Church. Mike Traylor has known me and my family since I was probably 12 or 13 years old. I went to school with his kids. His daughter was a year older than me. His son was a few years younger than me. My parents are still, like I said, they live out behind Balmina Baptist Church. My mom is an APHIS administrator at Little Rock Air Force Base. She spends all of her day and consumes her tax dollars buying groceries and restaurants, my parents do, in this city. I live in Saline County. My wife drugged me out there, and I tell folks, if you can't live in Jacksonville, I guess you can live in Bryant. That's my official position. But we're not inclined. I live here. You know, a lot of people that do this business in the United States, they work out of regional offices. They work out of Houston and Dallas and Chicago and St. Louis and Kansas City, and they fly in, do deals, and leave. I call it crash and dash. I told you in the beginning that the primary business of Johnson Controls is HVAC service. It's fire, it's security. The office on Colonel Glenn, the office off Maumelle Boulevard. We go to market out of those branch offices, out of those service branches, because we live where we sell. I do not sell in any other state. And therefore, I'm not inclined to come to this city or any county or any school district or any college or university that are my colleagues, my partners, and misrepresent the opportunity or the firm. Because if I do that, the next time the mayor is at ICMA or League of Cities, or the next time any number of these customers are at any of their associations, I'm done. The well is poisoned and I won't continue to sell in this state. So, you know, I have to sell where I live. And so I'm very focused on representing the truth and the reality. And I don't misrepresent the situation. That's not how we do business, which is one of the reasons that we have remained for the 30 years we've been in this business, the industry leader. What you see is what you get. And we're very confident that this is a fantastic opportunity for the city. And we would be honored and humbled to be your partner in helping that become a reality.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You're done.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your applause.
It took some skill to keep that going.
Hey, listen.
One of the things he told me is a check they've had to write is because they forgot to include the calculation of the reduction of the franchise fee.
That's right.
In the savings, because the franchise fee went down, so revenue dropped from franchise fee. So
yeah,
that's something that
so
we will take into account.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
There are companies that come in here and do this and say, we've never paid a shortfall. We don't pay shortfalls. My answer to that is companies that say that are misrepresenting the reality because either they're so inexperienced, they've not had that opportunity yet, or they're misrepresenting the reality. Because if you do this long enough, eventually you will have an engineer miss the ball. We have in our portfolio of business in Arkansas, we have paid 3 shortfall cycles. We did 2 projects at the city of Little Rock 15 years ago. We did a traffic division project where we retrofit all the incandescent traffic signals to LED. And then we did a large project to build and maintain the methane gas extraction infrastructure at the Little Rock landfill in South Little Rock. Well, to the mayor's point, someone, this was way before my time, because that project actually finished today, or this year. I took the public works director, their 15-year project closeout last summer. The engineer at the time failed to uncover or discover or didn't do his due diligence, whatever it was, that of course, there's not a meter at every intersection in the city of Little Rock. they pay Entergy an annual tariff for those lights to hang in the sky, just like you do any light in the city. So we took the KWH consumption from this down to this, and Entergy said, thank you, and did not reduce the tariff. So lived for years 1 through 15, every spring we took John Honeywell, the Public Works Director of the City of Little Rock, a $55,000 or $65,000 shortfall check. There was no way out of it. There was no way to fix it. We generally fix the problem so it doesn't repeat itself, but there was no fixing it. We sued Entergy. We lost. It was not their prerogative. It was ours. So that was a $750,000 engineering error that cost a gentleman his job, because that was a gross oversight. But generally we fixed the problem. The city of the landfill, the methane coming out of that landfill is really caustic. It was tearing up the rotary compressors that were extracting the landfill gas early, and their performance contract was for guaranteed uptime. So we figured out that we had to start replacing those compressors proactively before they failed. We paid one shortfall in the beginning, haven't paid 1 cent. We have a 65-year relationship with the University of Arkansas. They've done 3 of these phase projects. We've done 2 of them with them, 2 phases. We did a massive steam plant enhancement when they tied the quad north of the Razorback Stadium. When they built the quad, they tied it into their central steam plant, which is in the middle of campus behind the engineering building. We miscalculated the heating load for those res buildings for the steam plant. So it took we paid over 3 years, about $1.8 million in shortfalls, years 1 through 3, to the University of Arkansas while we rectified the problem. Unfortunately, it took that long because the solution was more load, more buildings, a bigger underground loop. Since 2013, that project has delivered an annual surplus, and they're a fantastic reference, which is why they did another project with us, because we took it in the mouth. We paid them the shortfalls while we fixed the issue and resolved the problem, because at the end of the day, the scope that the staff picks is what creates value. So I want you to get the value of what the staff thought they needed when they chose the project scope. So generally, when we can fix it, we pay the shortfall, fix the problem, because we want to keep doing this, and we want you to be a customer for life. We want to go to another city in a year or 2 and say, call those folks at Jacksonville. They'll tell you that this is what we say it is.
Where we go from here? Well, anybody got any questions they'd like to ask him?
I have some questions.
I like the part when he says, if they tell you $1 million, and it doesn't hit $1 million, you make sure you pay it. I like that part.
Yes, sir. That's the law.
I like that law.
And well, the
So-
next step is to,
Mayor?
Blevins has a question.
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Pull your mask down, Rose, and talk to your mic.
Oh,
Mr. Blevins.
Mr. Blevins has a
Oh,
question.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. First and foremost, the $76,800, is that an annual pay to you guys, or is it a one-time, like you're our friends for life for $76,800?
Yeah. So we're not paid through the state. We are not paid through annual savings. When we do these projects, we're paid as the general contractor and construction manager at risk. The savings, the way the city does a project. So if you say, okay, let's do a project, we want to pull the trigger on this. We want the $70,000 a year and $1.5 million. The mechanics are that when we develop a project and develop scope, and we come back to the city leadership and they come back to you and say, we need $1.4 million to do this project, the city would go and borrow the money from the lending institution of your choice, and Johnson Controls is guaranteeing that on an annual basis, the savings are there to fund the note service. Specifically, one of the changes that was made in the legislation in 2013 is it redefined the definition of a bond. Of all the projects we've done in Arkansas in the last 6 years that I've been in this role leading the business, they redefined the definition of a bond to a lease purchase. So all of our projects are generally funded with lease purchase because they don't have any impact on the city's borrowing capacity. It's not capital debt. It's not a Moody's rated transaction. You're not issuing bonds. So the way that works, sir, is that the mechanics are you pick a bank, whoever it is, you Bank of America, Wells Fargo, First Security, we would help facilitate that process because that's a niche infrastructure lending business. And that money is wired to an escrow account that the city owns. And from there, it looks like a traditional construction project. Johnson Controls, there is one contract the city signs. There is one throat to choke, and it's mine. We are the designer, engineer, procurement officer, and construction manager at risk. We are paid out of the money in escrow as the contractor. You know, every month we submit an invoice to whoever that is, you know, Miss David or the mayor, and they say, all right, you know, Bank of America, you are authorized to service this invoice for construction.
So are we, what I'm asking is the $76,800 that gets paid you on top of all this, like you also, you said become the contractor to get the work done. So you get money from that as well. But I'm asking specifically about the $76,800. That's a one-time pay for the duration of, say, this $1.4 million contract?
I'm sorry. You're talking about the cost of the development agreement.
That is correct.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the annual savings. I apologize. But yes, I will answer that question. But to clarify where I was going there at the end, because I was answering the question I thought he was asking, and this is not a very good salesman of me.
No. Well, that was my next question, actually. So you're answering it anyway.
We're not paid through savings. We're paid at the construction event. And then we guarantee on an annual basis that those savings are realized, and the sum of that savings must be sufficient to pay back the bank so that it's budget neutral. The $76,000, can we put the presentation back on the screen? That is for where we are today. This was a preliminary analysis. We did this analysis at no cost to the city. This was at risk for us because I wanted to make sure that there was a project. I didn't want to come here and tell you guys, hey, we've got no project, or there's a great project, and then we don't do it. From here, the city would execute that project development agreement. And at that point, the city would be, that's where the city has skin in the game and is obligated to Johnson Controls. We will spend, once we go into development, the next probably 90 days. It's like, yeah, perfect. Thank you. We would spend probably, here we go. So under project development, we would do an investment grade audit. And I mean every one of those words literally. We would perform over about 90 days an investment grade audit of the city's infrastructure. We will find things that Jimmy Oakley forgot existed because it was in some closet that didn't make any noise. We will find every opportunity to slow down the meters to produce savings. At the end of that audit, we will facilitate a workshop for the city leadership for them to select the scope of the project. We don't dictate scope to the city. It's my responsibility to say, hey, this is all the stuff that will generate savings. What of it do you want? And this is how much will be budget neutral. And then the city selects. They say, okay, we don't want HVAC in that building. We want HVAC in this building. We want, with these 50 units, we don't want these other 15, take them out of the project. At which point we would put together the project and bring it back for contract. Hey, this is the scope, this is the contract, let's pull the trigger and go into construction. The law requires that the $76,000, which is the cost of the project development agreement, be rolled into the project and covered by savings. So if assuming ideally that we go into contract together, that my IGA, my investment grade audit generates this self-funded project, you're going to say, great, the mayor loves it, everybody loves it, pull the trigger, sign the contract, let's go into construction. That $76,000 has to be funded in the savings. So if I come up with 70 grand a year, 1.4 million over 20 years, that must include the development, because the development is all the engineering, all the audit work, all of the construction management for writing scope, walking contractors. The only time the city would be obligated to pay Johnson Controls cash is if we got to the end of the audit, we presented a self-funded project to the city per our obligation, and the mayor and the leadership said, hey, Alex, this was great. You're a really nice guy. Thanks, but no thanks. We're going to part ways here. We're going to take your audit material and put it on the shelf. At that point, the city would owe us the cost of the project development agreement for engineering services rendered.
Which is $76,800.
That's the $76,000. So ideally, we deliver the project at the end of the IGA. It's budget neutral. It's what we've represented. And you say, great, I love this. Pull the trigger. Let's go do the work. Let's go install the equipment. And that $76,000 must be funded with the savings.
Now, to answer this question, and they probably hadn't thought of it or thinking of it, if you do your audit,
yes,
and you can't save us any money,
that's right.
We don't owe you the $76,000.
If we conclude the IGA and we were not able to deliver a self-funded project, you do not owe us the cost of the PDA. You're off the hook. And that risk of due diligence is why we did the prelim. That's why we have to know up front that, because we disqualify opportunities all the time. We do prelims and come back and say, I did one yesterday to a small school district in South Arkansas. Hey, there's not really a project here. There's not enough meat on the bone. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to you. It's just not enough oomph to do anything with. So we would not entertain going into an IGA. So I would think the only reason that I'm not going to assume for the city. In my historical experience, based off of the work we've done, the only time a customer would get to the end of the IGA and say, I'm not going to do a project unless there's political reasons involved, is if we don't bring back a project. If I totally misrepresented this and I come back and say, hey, you really only have a $500,000 project here. That's where you could say, hey, listen, we did not meet the obligations of the PDA. Okay. And then you're not obligated to pay us. Other than that, I think it would be. So does that answer your question?
That answers that question. I guess the other question I have is, I noticed all the buildings and the areas and stuff that you had listed on here. I noticed that it had Fireman Park on here. Did you guys actually look at the Boys and Girls Club and the Martin Street Youth Center as well?
We didn't, but we would intend to include those in the audit. The IGA is exhaustive. The preliminary analysis was very just high level. So we did not, as a part of the
Any city property will be included.
That's right. And so the prelim, we were just looking to where's the majority of the consumption, where's the majority of the spend, so we can accurately represent, this is really a good sampling. In the IGA, sir, we will exhaustively audit all the facilities, the exterior park lighting, trail lighting, whatever that may be, the athletic field lighting at the athletic complex, all of that we didn't evaluate in the prelim.
Well, you said that in your presentation because of 2020, how it was. On certain areas you hit and certain areas you didn't.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was covered already.
Yes, sir.
That question's answered.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah. No, we're good.
Thank you.
Okay, Brother Mayor, I'd like to think of making a motion to adopt this resolution.
I have questions as well.
Okay, we can do that
Yeah.
after first.
Yes.
And after then, if the motion passed, since we let the mayor and his department heads enter into an agreement with you all, if it's going to work for the city of Jacksonville.
Have a second. Then we'll go into discussion.
Second.
Okay. Now then, Rose.
All right.
Hold your mask down, talk to your microphone.
So my first question is this a state bidding program?
It doesn't fall under that category because they're the ones that are doing everything and the risk. And she's asking, does this have to be approved to spend more than $20,000?
Right. No, Councilwoman. If I can go back, it's like the second slide where I talked about the enabling legislation.
Right.
Everything rides under Amendment 89. So all of I love my legislators, but in typical state legislator fashion, they passed 4 separate pieces of legislation for the 4 separate vertical markets: K-12, local government, high ed, state agency. All of them, he was responsible for some of that. All of them ride under Amendment 89, which, since I am at risk and I'm holding the liability for the performance and our commitment to the city for 20 years, everything falls under Amendment 89, and it is described just as I've expressed it.
Right. So it's not specifically a state bidding program, but it's in state legislation.
Oh, yes, this is enabled through state legislation. That's correct.
Okay.
But it doesn't fall under, the Office of State Procurement and what you would traditionally be bound by under state procurement law because of Amendment 89. Does that answer that question?
That does.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When y'all do your audit and your scope and you come back to the city and present it to the mayor, does he have the choice then to pick and choose what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do? But I guess there has to be a level that there's still going to be payback for y'all.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you came back and instead of doing 1.4 million, we only wanted to do 200,000, that wouldn't be enough, would it?
Well, so that's not necessarily. That's a pretty complex answer because there are fixed costs associated with the audit, and we're going to walk subcontractors. The cost of the scope is X. We know that if you replace 56 pieces of equipment, we put 2% contingency, 2% risk. There's 1% for warranty. So all of those fixed costs are applied to each of the FIMs. So if you do 3 FIMs, all of those fixed costs are spread out across the 3. If you do 12 FIMs, those fixed costs are evenly spread out across the 12. So when we bring back the scope to the mayor, it's the city's prerogative to say, I'm not going to do a $1.4 million project. I'm going to do a $500,000 project. But what happens is, and yes, we do this big workshop. We've got this, we call it it's a tool. It's a big sophisticated computerized tool where everything gets put on the screen together. All of the improvement measures, all of the costs, all of the savings, all of the payback. And on the other side of the screen is the cash flow, the pro forma, the total cost of the project, how it pays back, energy savings, operation savings. And as they turn those FIMs on and off, like, hey, I'm going to do the boiler at the aquatic center, but I'm not going to do the package unit. Turn off the package unit. That model changes in lifetime. And we just want to make sure that at the end of 20 years that the project is cash flow positive. So they will get to pick and choose the scope.
Okay, I would like for y'all to be involved in what we pick and choose.
Yeah, sure. That's right. That's pretty typical, right? Whatever members of the school board or city council. So there reaches a point where it says, hey, if we're going to do $200,000, that's going to buy nothing. That's going to buy a couple of split system, not, more than split. It's going to buy a handful of package units, maybe a boiler and some lighting. That's not worth the city's time or energy. So
at that point, we would be the 76,800.
Well, if you did a half,
cost to us.
that would really hurt my feelings.
Right.
If you did a $500,000 project that was cash flow positive, it's cash flow positive because it pays for the $74,000 and these other things.
Okay.
So the $74,000 that number was derived on a cost per square foot formula that's published by the Arkansas Energy Office. And it's 18 cents for anything less than 250,000 square feet, 17 cents, 250,000 to 500,000. Anything over 500,000 is 16 or 15 cents. We actually did this project less than the state average. And that encompasses all of our engineering, the contracting. We're going to walk contractors. We're going to write the scope. They're going to tell us who's preferred, who's not preferred. We're going to gather all that data. These projects are guaranteed maximum price. There is no cost overrun. There are no change orders. If we get into construction and we had a big old snafooski and missed something, I'm not bringing a change order back to the city. The only change orders that these projects ever see are initiated by the customer to modify scope. So we don't build these projects on an estimate. We don't say, it's going to take about $150,000 to do that work. And then you give me the contract and I go on the back end and beat up my subcontractors for my margin. We have firm competitively bid pricing that's been walked apples for apples by the city's preferred contractors for every craft, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, whatever that may be, because we want to keep the money local. We strive to use the people that are in town. Mr. Oakley and the other department heads, they've got vendors that are in town that are good to the city, that know the city buildings. They've got vendors that are not allowed in city buildings. We want to know who those people are. So all of that cost is built into that $74,000. So we know that when we get to the end of the line and you do, let's say a $600,000 project, well, maybe 200,000 of that is fixed cost. It's the project management, it's warranty, it's risk, it's taxes, it's the cost of borrowing. It supports a 2% cost of borrowing. So, $600,000 may only be $400,000 worth of actual scope. Does that make sense? So, I'm going to do and I'm just using numbers here. I'm going to do a $600,000 project. That's all we have the appetite for. But because the fixed costs are fixed, and the more scope there is, the more those are spread out evenly. That $600,000 really is only $400,000 worth of scope. So we want to do more. We want to get more bang for our buck if we're going to do this thing. And that's all. As long as it cash flows, then it's got to cover my obligation. The only time you wouldn't have to pay me is if I don't bring anything back. Like we just totally missed this and there's no way to bring back a budget neutral project.
So if the cost of the project was $1 million, let's say we ended up with something that was $1 million worth of improvements. Mm-hmm. Between now and next February, we're going to spend $1 million, right? Because we're going to be paying for it.
That's right.
So that's what we would have to take out a loan.
Yes.
To pay for it. And then as we make payments on the loan, if the savings don't equal that, then y'all pay it back.
That's right, because the note payment is annual. There's an annual and so we have a structured finance team at our headquarters in Milwaukee. We're not a financial advisor. We don't make recommendations, referrals, or advise. But this is a unique part of infrastructure lending. You know, Cruz and Associates at First Security Bank is one of our national vendors. We have a list of about 29 banks that we work with across the United States. It's a lot of banks you heard of: Wells Fargo, UBS, SunTrust, Bank of America, and then a bunch of banks you've never heard of that just do this public sector infrastructure lending. And so, as a matter of protocol, we want the city to get the best possible rate, because if you've got only a 2% cost of borrowing instead of 3%, that means more money is going to fund scope and not fund cost of borrowing. So what we'll do is before it comes back to the city council, the way it would happen traditionally, this is the way we've done it across the ASU system, the U of A, all of our county jobs, our K-12 jobs, is they say, okay, this is the scope. This is a $1.5 million project. These are the FIMs. These are the savings. We would take and bundle an RFP on behalf of the city, and we would put it on the street to these 29 banks. And we'd give them 10 business days and say, bring back your best and final offer for $1.5 million at 20 years fixed. And they'll respond. And we put it in a matrix and hand it to the city. And they pick their bank and say, this is the bank that I want. One of the reasons we facilitate that for a few reasons, because tax exempt lease purchases or municipal lease purchases are not something that finance does every day. Generally we're issuing bonds. We do that, but also because we try to line up the dates so that the project start date and project reconciliation kind of all line up with the annual note service, so that maybe your note service to Merrill Lynch is in March and the project year one wrapped up in April, or vice versa, switch that. So it helps us so that it's not just completely disjointed, so that if, you owe Cruz and Associates $1 million in the middle of the summer and our project year one doesn't end until June or September, and if there's a shortfall, I've got to make you whole that you're not covering the gap. We try to line all the dates up, which is, that's just a cost of doing business for us. We don't charge for that. We don't make any money on the financing. It just helps facilitate the value.
Is there a possibility of you doing this audit and it doesn't come back at 70, it comes back at 90?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That is traditionally, those numbers, we don't, we don't run our projects to the edge of the table. We don't like to leave a lot of cash on the table, meat on the bone, savings, but we don't run them to the very edge. So that's, y'all, I was in the city for like 3 hours. Our engineer, we walked for about 3 hours and we just looked at 24 months of data. It was enough for us based off our experience to know that, yes, this is real, but it was not a scientific audit. That's what's next.
In the same way as it come back as 90, like it could also come back as, come back as 90, it could also come back as 50, right?
It's certainly possible, but much less likely, because that was my responsibility in the preliminary analysis to know. And that's why we do the EUI score. We rack and stack your rates. We compare it against our projects in the state and region. So it's certainly possible, yes, sir, but that tends to not be the case.
So I need clarification real quick. So just to make sure, the soft cost of entering this developmental agreement to go into the audit is for the $76,800 and not $780 or $68,000 like it states.
No,
it's sorry to interrupt. I was actually going to bring that up. Should the council choose to approve this, I will correct the typo. The numerical value is correct. The part that's written out was the typo.
Yes, 70. And we're not asking you to pay that. That's just what you're obligating the city to if you elect to walk away at the end of the IGA. Ideally, you do not put any capital in the project. So we were very fortunate to do this across the entire ASU system.
Mm-hmm.
Every ASU campus, excluding Mountain Home and Henderson State, but that was pre-ASU system. We did $29 million across the ASU system of this performance contracting since 2015, and they never put a dollar on the table. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're going after, that it's totally budget neutral.
So I was going to ask you, being in the real estate and the prices of everything seems to have really got crazy. So do you have a certain people that you use? If the price on a heat and air unit, it was $3,000, now it's $10,000. So is that all figured in? You have a place for all that?
Yes, sir, we do. And so there's a couple of ways we hedge those market risks. Johnson Controls is York. We are the York factory.
Right.
Our UPG equipment is manufactured in Norman, Oklahoma. If the city doesn't want York, if the city says, hey, we are lock, stock, and barrel Train or Carrier, or pick a brand, then that's what we'll put in. If they tell us it's got to be Train, we're going to put in Train. But I can get a lot more scope for the dollar that I'm buying it from myself, who is the factory.
That's what I was asking. That way you can control the quality and make sure it's good. Anyway, they're going to guarantee it.
Yes, sir.
But you can also guarantee the price.
Yes, sir.
Because that is a concern or a risk right now with, with everything that's happening with COVID. I mean, we're
That's right.
seeing appliances and everything are jumping sky high.
That's right.
I mean, people aren't figuring that in there. But so y'all not thinking about that with Johnson, with the light and with the manufacturing,
Yeah.
that you would have control on that, which would be good. And it would be a good product and good warranty. That's
Yes, sir. That's right. And the fact that we are the largest provider in this space in North America, we have a significant buying power. Our procurement power is significant at Sylvania and GE and all those firms.
Okay. Any other questions?
How long does a standard HVAC unit last?
It depends on what we're talking about. If it's like a split system like you have in your home, the American Society for Heating and Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE, that's the governing body for HVAC, and they dictate the standards whereby manufacturers must manufacture their equipment if they're ASHRAE certified, which everybody that is. So we would call that unitary product, small tonnage. ASHRAE would tell you 15 years. The split system you have outside your home is 15 years. A piece of large tonnage equipment like these large package units that sit on the north end of the community center, it's again 15 years, but the market would tell you 20. The reality is that there's equipment in this city that's 25 years old, so we know they will run. But yeah, there's some. So I was at a school district last week, and they had an elementary school in South Arkansas, and literally the elementary school had all original equipment from 1989, all York HVAC equipment that was running from 1989. So for us, that's a good question there, and it's a leading question for me. When we evaluate equipment and we audit equipment, for us, end of useful life is 15 years old or older. We will not audit equipment. We will audit it, but we will not flag equipment for replacement unless it's 15 years old or older, unless one of the building directors tells us, hey, get this piece of equipment. For example, Washington County, they had 56 units of every size and makeup. 54 of them were all 15 years old or older, and the other 2 were 12 years old. But the operations manager specifically told us these 2 units are lemons. They're cash cows. We want them out of the building.
So with us going into a 20-year payback term, and the systems that we are replacing get to their end of use, useful life, as you say, what are you going to do as the contractor?
Yeah, Councilwoman Raines, I appreciate that question. That's an incredibly astute question. I don't get that very often. And that used to be the hardest, that used to be the question that stumped me. Yes, we're talking about HVAC equipment that has a 20-year life cycle that will be paid for in 20 years. One of the reasons that the statute is limited to 20 years is because we're prohibited from putting equipment in the field longer than the reasonably accepted industry life cycle. Yes, you're going to spend money now to replace HVAC equipment that at 20 years it'll be paid for and will need to be replaced again. But that would also be true today if Mr. Oakley was in this chair asking you to spend $100,000 in cash. You spend that $100,000 in cash today, and in 20 years, you'd have to spend that $100,000 in cash again. This is an opportunity to break the cash cycle and use energy savings. And we know that in 20 years, you do another performance contract because efficiency will be, again, double what it is today.
Right, but didn't you say that your standard end of use life cycle is 15 years?
That's the ASHRAE published industry life cycle is 15 to 20 years, depending on the equipment. I did say that, yes, ma'am. But the law allows us to put equipment in the field that is a reasonably accepted market standard. And to Mr. Oakley's point, there's a lot of equipment out here that is still running at 20 plus years old.
Right,
So,
but it's definitely not efficient at that point.
it's not as efficient as what you would buy today, but it's not. That answer is it depends. Yeah.
It pulls more power because it's old.
Yeah, you're all over it. Yes, yes.
A lot of that has to do with it. In one building, it might not run 3 months, out of the year. and they might run it at 78, and another group might run it at 70. So that one that's run at 78 is going to last a whole lot longer than 20. The one that's run at 72 is going to last the 15 or 18, but it's still set up for 20.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the equipment at the public safety
yes.
complex runs mostly 24/7. The
Right.
equipment at the senior citizen center runs on a schedule.
The 15-year warranty is based on the everyday usage. So if you don't use it every day.
Yeah, you can, it's how it's controlled, but with this new equipment, it is a lot more efficient, and with them being able to control the on and off usage with the computers and everything, is going to make it last a lot longer. Where if you leave, say you leave on Friday, like he was saying, then, Jimmy or whoever's there can check that when he leaves, make sure that it's turned up to 78, and that's going to be a lot more efficient, and it's going to save us energy, and it's going to save the equipment.
Yes.
So yeah, and the deal, your question about it, if you paid 100,000 this year, and in 20 years, what would you pay? I would say it's probably going to be $180,000.
Sure.
I mean, I'm just saying the way things are going. I mean, things are changing, but as you know, in the life expectancy is changing. So I know y'all's equipment is good, but I'm just saying that a hot water heater, Rose, right now we get a 5-year full warranty. At 6 years, there's a lot of them going out.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, to just make sure that I have my notes correct. How long did you say that it would take for the solar array to pay itself off?
Well, it has to be paid off in 20 years or less.
Right, but with the cost savings of $293,000, you said that it would be paid off in X amount of years.
Yes. So the answer with solar is very much, it depends, because there are a myriad of variables when you're installing large scale utility solar. So solar is one of those things that the economy of scale goes with size. The bigger the array, the lower the cost per watt. That's a variable. So if they said we're going to do a 1.5 megawatt array versus a 2, it'll be higher cost per watt at 1.5. When we go to execute the IGA and we audit, if they say it's going to be this field over here behind public safety, we're going to have to do a geotechnical study. There's going to have to be surveys, the tidal searches. So it's possible that in the geotechnical study, it's, hey, this is on a fault line. So now it's got to be buried with epoxy webbing beams. And that has a higher cost than if I was just putting it in the ground. Or if it's a rooftop, if we put 1.5 in the back 40 and we put 0.5 megawatt on the roof. So all of that plays into the total cost per watt, which determines if it's going to be a 17-year payback and have 3 years of extra cash flow, or an 18-year payback. I would say at this scale, 16 years is probably, it won't be less than 16 years.
Okay.
And it depends. So it might be 19 years. So they will see all that and guide us through that process to maximize the outcome when they get to scope selection. That's an excellent question. Thank you.
Give anybody a chance to ask before we vote.
Well, we're going to discussion, right?
We're in discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was still questions asking to him. I'm sorry. Well, I want to say, last city council meeting, I brought up a couple of things like, add an additional Facebook page and adding LED lights to Main Street. That was, one was like a cost of $5,000. Another one was a cost of, clicking 2 times. And you guys said that we didn't have any money, that we needed to put it on the budget for next year. And apparently now I'm finding out during that time, you guys were already talking to someone about saving money with LEDs and everything else like that. So I guess my question is, how do we all of a sudden have $78,600 to put towards, an audit that may or may not go through, that also will lead into a $1.4 million leverage for the city or more to do all this when we didn't have $5,000 for lights down Main Street? I guess that's my question.
Let me say, spending any money.
Let me say something, Brian.
We're spending
council member. First of all, we're always trying to find ways to save money in this city. That is the number one thing we're doing. At the time you brought that up, there's always something going on that we're trying to do. So what we should be is happy that the fact that we're sitting here discussing this, and then now we can call for the vote and go ahead and get this thing started.
That is absolutely not even like, I don't even know where that came from, but okay. Like
Councilmember Bowman, that's where it came from.
Yeah. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we didn't even have that much money. Where are we getting the $78,600 to our $76,800 to pay for this? Where are we getting the money to pay for this super audit that's going to lead to the plan of $1.4 million?
We don't plan on paying it.
I think Mr. Ray said that if the audit comes back and it's not worthy of doing the project, we don't pay the $76,000. Is that not correct?
Not if it wasn't worthy. Just if we didn't save enough money.
Why would we not do it if it's worthy? Why would we not do it if there's no money paid out? You're paying for it with savings.
Like, so basically we're gambling for $76,800.
No, because if it doesn't come back that we will do it, we will not pay the $76,800.
That is not true, correct?
No, Alex, we don't pay 76 if you don't bring us a budget neutral.
If I don't bring a project that is budget neutral, that is cash flow neutral, that pays for itself with no money out of pocket, then you don't pay.
They don't pay anything. That's already been covered.
Yeah. And if it's a $500,000 project or if it's a $1.4 million project, it is my responsibility. I'm on the hook. You're on the hook to pay me if you elect not to proceed. I'm on the hook if I don't bring you a project that's budget neutral and cost the city no money. Does that make
sense?
But at that time, the $76,800 is paid.
No, sir. The only time you would pay, the only time there would be a cash payment from the city of Jacksonville to Johnson Controls is if we brought you a budget neutral project and you said, hey, this is great, but for whatever reason, we're not going to proceed. We're going to put it on a shelf and do it later. Yeah. Ideally, that was the ASU example. The only time you would pay us cash is if we brought you back a project that was cash flow positive and you said, hey, even though it's cash flow positive, we don't want to do it. So thank you. And you get the work. Thank you for the services rendered, the engineering and the construction scoping and auditing. Ideally, that we bring back a project that's budget neutral. We bring back whatever it is, a 1 million, 1.4, you pick, you say it's 1 million. And if I bring you back a $1.5 million self-funded project scope and y'all pick a $1 million project, that 70,000, that cost, that PDA must be covered by the savings so that it is not, there's no cash issuance from the city to the firm.
If we want to spend $1 million, we got to save $1,076,000.
Right. That if I bring back a job that's $1 million, it's going to include that. That's the $76,000 will be covered in that $1 million.
Okay.
So ideally, sir, that you are not, and that's what I was saying about the $29 million across the ASU system. The purpose of this, the value of the proposition, why the legislature passed it, is it's a way for the public sector, K-12 municipal government, to drive large scale facilities improvements without having to spend cash. You would only pay us cash if you elected to include it in the project, or if, again, we brought you a project and it's what we said it was, and you said, hey, even though it's cash flow neutral, we don't want this.
Mr. Mayor, I call for the question.
All right. Call. All right.
Hope that answers your question, sir.
It's time to vote.
Well, did you have a question, council member?
No. He's calling
Okay.
for the question.
Well, before we move to vote, Alex, I would like to thank you for the excellent presentation.
Thank
It
you.
was
Yeah, it was a great
absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
I'm all for being environmentally friendly and more sustainable. I would like to move to postpone this so that I have more time personally to study this.
Well, we've had a call, so we have to vote.
There is a call for the question. There is a motion on the floor.
Right.
No other motion can interrupt that.
Right. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Hey,
Okay. Motion carried. Alex, thank you.
Thank you very much,
I
council.
assume you'll get the contract. Yeah, okay. All right, next order of business is I need a motion to suspend the rules to hear resolution 804.
Make a motion to suspend the rules to hear motion 804.
And 804 is a housekeeping
Do I?
on water control stuff, flood
The agenda.
stuff that CEPD makes us do.
Did you say 804?
Is that it? Yeah. It's just a housekeeping thing.
Something we have to do all the time.
Yeah.
I second to the motion was Ray.
Reedy, did you second the motion?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Reedy.
okay.
All right, resolution 804, a resolution adopting the Pulaski County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan for the city of Jacksonville, Pulaski County, Arkansas.
Don't we have to vote to suspend the rules?
Yes.
All right,
I'm sorry, I thought there was a vote. There's just a motion in a second.
you're right.
Suspend the rules.
All right, roll call.
Councilmember Deets. Aye. Councilmember Bowman.
Aye.
Councilmember Blevins.
Man, I'm sorry. I just don't have ordinance 804 on my paper.
It's brought here.
Resolution 804, check your email.
Can we just repeat what it is one time? I'm sorry, Stephanie, can you just repeat what it is?
Jimmy, it's the watershed, it's a flooding mitigation.
Oh, all right, gotcha. Yeah, I.
Yeah. It's something that we just have to participate with.
Yeah. Sorry, I just didn't have it. I didn't know what it was. Sorry, my bad.
All right. So, what's your vote on suspending the rules? To hear it? Aye, okay. He said yes.
Sansing.
Aye.
Ray. Aye. Mashburn.
Aye.
Trailer.
Aye.
Whitty.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need to read it again? Or just let Jimmy explain it?
I'll let Stephanie read it.
I'll read it again. Resolution 804, a resolution adopting the Pulaski County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan for the city of Jacksonville, Pulaski County, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I need a motion to approve. Okay, and a second.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Okay, so we've adopted that plan. Moving on. Now that we've adopted new rules, we're going to change. I don't want people emailing letters and comments to Susan or myself. If somebody needs to speak to the council, get a council member to sponsor you for the agenda, or get me to sponsor you on the agenda, and we'll get you on Zoom or however if you need to say something. Because I got this long letter. I'm not gonna read it all. It just says there's a certain council member that hasn't filled out their financial report and isn't filling out the other reports required by that. But I'll enter this into the record. That's a full letter. Okay. Announcements. Next Tuesday, Taste of New Orleans. I think my wife sold 60 tickets today, 60 more. So you got tickets, be sure and go. It's pick up at noon. It's $20 for two, 15 for one. And so, yeah, any other announcements that we need to make?
I want to tell Mr. Oakley and his team, we appreciate the work you did doing our snow. You did a real good job with what little we had.
Yes, he did.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You that for me.
He said after the snow of 2012, he bought a new plow and hadn't used it. This is the first time we've used it.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Copy of his presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You just have to her to get us back to Stephanie.
What is it?
This anonymous letter that was mailed to her.
Yeah.